Hello, and welcome back to The Composer's Life. I'm Nadia, your host, a fellow composer, and today is very exciting because I'm interviewing two composers, Robert Lydecker and Kevin Lax. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey
All right.
Nadia.
Hey.
Great. Nice to be here.
Nice. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. To introduce them both, I will just quickly read their biographies. Robert or Bob Lydecker is an Emmy-winning classically trained composer who grew up playing drums in punk bands. Credits include Orion in the Dark, Kung Fu Panda, The Dragon Knight, XXX Return of Xander Cage, Iron Fist Season 2, and Lethal Weapon Seasons 2 and 3. ABC's Designated Survivor co-scored with Sean Callery, and the Fox series Sleepy Hollow co-scored with Brian Tyler. Outside of film music, he's been involved with work in food justice, guerrilla gardening, and habitat restoration. Our second guest, Kevin Lax, is originally from the Pacific Northwest but now resides in Los Angeles. Kevin started his music journey studying piano, voice, and music composition and attended USC's Thornton School of Music for undergraduate and graduate studies in composing. He's now an Emmy Award-winning composer, rapidly emerging for his compelling, versatile, and skillfully written music. Having scored 2018 summer blockbuster The First Purge, he recently wrapped up work on DreamWorks' feature film Orion in the Dark, written by Charlie Kaufman and co-scored with Robert Lydecker. And he also recently finished the TV series Kung Fu Panda: The Dragon Knight. Other notable credits include work on Apple TV's See and Foundation, Netflix's The Witcher: Blood Origin, ABC's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as well as AMC's Walking Dead. Outside of music, Kevin enjoys exploring the great outdoors, teaching, soccer, and environmentalism. How are you guys both doing today?
Doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, doing great.
So I guess we'll just jump right into things. I'd love to get to know a bit about how you both got into composing and why you chose to do film scoring. So I guess my first question is, how did your childhood and adolescence affect your decision to become composers?
Good question. Uh, I started piano at a young age, and you know, got pretty into. My parents had a John Williams anthology of piano reduction, so at that time, kind of early piano, got into playing through some of the film music of John Williams, and then I saw some kind of pivotal films from the late 80s, including Land Before Time and Willow, which had lovely scores, which kind of further captured my interest in film scoring. Then in high school, I played in a couple of jazz bands, piano, rock bands, and our high school, kind of unique at the time, had a music synthesis class. So then I got further into MIDI sequencing using Pro Tools, and then eventually actually scored my first film, and then decided to go to USC. So where I met Bob. We did our undergrad and graduate together, and yeah, that was great. We collaborated with a bunch of filmmakers, went to grad school, and further studied film music, and then yeah, kind of tinkered away in film music. After that, working for composers, writing for a lot of Lifetime and Hallmark movies. And eventually, some of the people who I met at USC, their careers matured, and they hired you for projects, and kind of so on and so forth, and kind of ended up where I am today.
So for me, as a kid, early on, I was interested a little bit more in film and actually in art. Like I was liked drawing all the time, and my mom's parents actually were involved in the film industry. So growing up, she would like show me classic movies and talk about the cinematography and editing. So that's kind of where my mind was, and it wasn't until I was maybe like 12 or something that I started getting more into music. As a kid, I also did choir, so I learned like some basic music theory from that and played drums in school, so I had an instrument. But yeah, when I was like maybe sixth grade or something, my family got a computer that had a music notation program on it that I just randomly found, and I started clicking notes on a staff, and I would hit playback, and it would like play cacophony, and I was like, well, this is pretty awesome. Um, and I slowly like figured out how to make it sound good, and kind of fell in love with that. And I was like, okay, I want to be a composer and do music. And then went to study music at USC with Kevin, and kind of because I had the love of film and art early on, was thinking like, how do I do this as a career? And I was like, oh, film music. um, so that's kind of how it all worked.
That's very cool. I have not thought about The Land Before Time since I was like 6. I forgot about those films. Those are amazing ones.
Well, time to revisit it. Has a great end song by Diana Ross also. So
Oh yeah, Land Before Time always made me. I associate like a bunch of sad memories with that movie.
yeah, it was kind of like a Bambi, where because there was like a mom death in there, so I think it was tough for young ones.
Yeah, it is definitely sad. I mean, they have to literally like find safety by themselves. So, yeah, makes sense. But I haven't actually listened to the music cuz I didn't know when I was that young. I didn't really pay attention. So I'm interested. I'd be interested to watch that again and see what it's like. Um I don't know about you guys, but I feel like when you decide to do film scoring or composing, it's almost like you accidentally stumble upon it because I don't think it's something that people think about doing as a job. So it's kind of like, I mean, even hearing your guys' stories and background, it's like you started somewhere and then like one day you were like, oh, I could do this thing, which I feel like is kind of what happened to me as well.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
like you go to kindergarten and they're like, "What do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to be a fireman or a policeman or a film
Yeah,
composer?"
exactly.
Yeah, it's like a little bit more niche.
Right. Yeah. So, did you guys both grow up in California?
This is Bob. I actually grew up in Connecticut, close to New York City, and then I came to California for college.
Yeah, and I grew up in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, wow. Okay. Cool. So, what made you both want to go to USC for school? Was it kind of part of your decision to pursue film scoring? You thought it would be like the best place to go?
Yeah, definitely for me. Um, they were like one of the few places that had a program in film scoring, and then also just their classical composition program was supposed to be really good. Plus the film school and the weather and great musicians there too.
Yeah, they had a pretty illustrious the scoring program. I remember reviewing kind of the course curriculum and had like Jerry Goldsmith there at one point, so it was kind of this rich history. And actually what kind of was cool is that when I was in high school, I came down to visit USC, and I had a couple of students who were a couple years older than me, were at USC. So I was able to hang out with them and get a little more introduced to the life in LA. So that was a pretty strong, uh, you know, component towards coming to LA.
Yeah, Kevin, did you apply to other music schools or did you apply to more like university type places?
Kind of both, actually. Berkeley College of Music, UCLA, University of British Columbia. I think programs that had strong composition programs, but also I think maybe had blossoming curriculum in film scoring, or at least music for media. All of which, especially obviously Berkeley and then USC. UCLA had kind of a light wing of that, which has grown, as did Miami and University of British Columbia.
So, I went to Berkeley and I do feel that one thing that was lacking was actually working with film students because there's not the normal majors and major study areas in Berkeley because it's just completely music. Um, so I did feel like my networking and maybe just business skills in general were never really learned there. It's kind of been something I've had to figure out afterwards. So, do you guys feel like studying at USC really helped with that part of film scoring for you?
I think it helped me a lot actually. I mean, it was nice that Kevin and I both had, a solid amount of time there as undergrads to just like focus on music. And I think Kevin probably did student films while he was an undergrad, but for me, I didn't do it until the 5th year where I was doing film scoring. And they kind of just, well, it's up to you. I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but um, it's kind of up to you whether you collaborate with the film students, but they definitely encourage it. So you could just kind of jump in and like meet as many people as you want. And that was a really good experience for me to kind of learn how to like connect with someone quickly, how to like kind of pitch yourself, how to collaborate.
Yeah, for sure. When Bob and I, when you mentioned that 5th year, which is it's a grad program, you study specifically film scoring, while your undergraduate's more in traditional composition of Beethoven, Brahms, and there was a great course, working or instructing the composer for directors that we attended, and it was just kind of a nice way to get into the nitty gritty of how are directors considering composers, because oftentimes music is maybe an area where they feel sensitive because they're not as experienced or they don't school them in that, so it kind of helped break down some of the barriers, how to communicate with each other, just, discussing emotion and how that translates to music and whatnot. So it was helpful having that there. And also the Trojan network is pretty rich, especially here in LA, in terms of just, I mean, I'm sure Bob can attest to this, but like 90% of the people I work with are somehow USC related. Either I met them directly or a couple degrees separated. So it was pretty strong aspect of it. But Nadi, at Berkeley, do they help facilitate with filmmakers in the Boston area in terms of like Harvard students, film students, or I don't know, students in that area?
I definitely remember receiving emails every once in a while about a film student who inquired about working with someone from Berkeley. And I think there were maybe one or two classes you could do where they would actually pair you up with a film student, but it was more encouraged that you go find work, but I didn't really know how or where to go. So I definitely felt like that could have been something that could have been taken more advantage of, just in terms of the school, organizing those kinds of things or even events. But as far as the education of film scoring, like I definitely learned things that I wouldn't be able to learn on my own. But as far as, yeah, working with students and stuff, I think it could have been a bit better personally. But
Yeah, that
yeah,
sounds like a tough task.
yeah, because it was kind of like, oh, we'll teach you everything about the music, the technology, but you have to figure out how to actually go out and find stuff to do. So, yeah.
In our program, it was nice. They had a website with each composer had their little bio and a little bit of their music, and then they would tell the film students, okay, when you're doing your film, go on this site and choose a composer or some composers you want to meet with to do your short film. So we had students contacting us, and then we'd meet with them, and usually it was like more projects than you could score.
That's nice.
Yeah, it
That'd be
was really
nice.
nice.
Yeah. I remember one of you mentioned that it was kind of a nice place because students didn't quite know how to talk about music or where they wanted music in their films. And I found that working with students on their films is like that as well. And I really enjoy that actually, because I feel like you can kind of have so much creative, direction over it because they have no idea.
Totally. And like for me, I was learning too. So I don't know, it was really fun to meet people and just kind of embark on this journey together and explore, okay, how do music and film work? And we would have ideas, but they wouldn't always work. And sometimes they would. And yeah, it was definitely a good time for exploration and experimentation.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to just comment on Nadia meeting people, kind of not having, I guess Berkeley didn't provide the biggest foundation to meet people. And while USC, I think, obviously had the film school there and the network and Trojan network. But I do think there's actually merit to like pushing yourself to go meet people, where I think that's one of the bigger dividers between who makes it to the next tier, so to speak, of film, is if you can kind of have that internal drive to continue to facilitate your career. And I guess this is kind of it's one of many aspects of internal drive to succeed in the field, but meeting people is pretty critical, whether it's like uncomfortable for you if you're more introverted, but that's, that there's a saying because of that, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I think kind of, I always kind of think of it, as a trickle or a river. You're always trying to meet someone or kind of facilitate a new relationship, even as you gain more experience and more credits. It's still kind of a key aspect, and kind of overcoming that like element is pretty, I think, pretty significant to success and growing your career.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Especially in something like film scoring where there's not a clear path, like, oh, I graduate, I apply for this job, and then I get promoted, I get this job. It's definitely one that you kind of forge yourself. So you have to have that skill to go out and meet people and figure out where to find them and make those relationships, like you said, because that's what brings you work later. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's definitely a great point. So, you guys met at USC, is that right?
That's
Yep.
right.
And did you guys do some projects together there, or did you just become friends and decide you would want to do stuff together? Kind of, how did you guys decide that you'd want to actually work together on things?
Well, we were arch nemesis for a while. No. Yeah, we just were good friends for a while, and we only started collaborating a couple years ago. We started working with the same agent, so we figured if we're pitching for like the same project, may as well pitch together. And also, a lot of good reasons to collaborate with people. But
yeah, it was something that, yeah, we didn't really. I mean, yeah, Bob and I, of course, stayed in touch and kept our friendship. But as Bob said, it wasn't until a couple of years that we kind of considered approaching in tandem, which has proven pretty. It's a really great relationship and collaboration so far.
That's awesome. I definitely have questions about what it's like to work together. But before we get into that, you guys recently worked on a film. Well, at least it recently came out called Orion in the Dark. I'm saying that right, right? And it's out on Netflix. Is that right?
Correct.
How does it feel to have completed that film
Yep.
and have it released?
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was a fun. It was a great. We worked on Kung Fu Panda prior with DreamWorks, the TV show, and that led. Well, still had to go through the or demoing process to get Orion, but we had a little inside thread. Maybe I guess it didn't play a huge role, but it played maybe a pretty minor role, but it nonetheless helped. And so, but being Bob and I's second collaboration, but now as a feature film, it was a little more. We had good working relationship in terms of how to operate, but it was a little more. You just kind of had to change up the I guess the roles or the approach a little. But the director was awesome, and the film turned out beautifully, and um, yeah, and it was an interesting. It was scoring it because we didn't expect to do it all live, but pretty much at the end of the day, it was recorded all live, and it was 70 minutes of music. So, and but we had to kind of take some guerrilla tactics to get there. But Bob and I we came together and had a little process, and especially towards the end, and which is pretty common for films to get pretty kind of more intense towards the end, but towards delivery. But it was a fun one to bring it all together.
I do want to go back. So you guys said that your first collaboration was the Kung Fu Panda series. What was it like to work together on that? How did you decide who was doing what and all of that?
Well, so for TV, there's a lot of crazy deadlines. So we kind of figured kind of like divide and conquer. Like we kind of combine minds and figure out what do we want to do in terms of like big picture. How should the music sound? How should, the scoring be done? And then it's like when we get an episode, it's like Kevin does 10 minutes and I do 10 minutes. But even before that, we had some demos that we wrote. So we would each, like I would do a pass of like scoring a scene, and Kevin would do a pass scoring a scene. I don't know. There's some other aspects of it which Kevin can chime in on.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally right what Bob said. We also would like develop themes, of course, early on, and that's kind of the first step. With Kung Fu Panda, we initially thought we were going to have a ton of time to develop themes and kind of this, but then it took them a while to figure out who they're going to go with as far as music composers, and so we had a little more of a pinch. We still had some time to develop themes, but so Bob and I kind of came together and decided he'll take that theme and I'll take this, and then we kind of hot potatoed it, and then we kind of applied that. So it's always nice having thematic ideas because then you can kind of just kind of throw them in wherever and they play well. And as the show progressed, a new theme might present itself, and Bob and I would say, "Hey, why don't you take this one and I'll take that one," and then we kind of again share it back and forth. And we share stems, like the musical elements to if someone came up with a cool sound or idea, and so it was pretty collaborative. But it was also we kind of gave ourselves space to compose and a little bit of personal space to kind of do their thing.
That's really crazy. I guess it would help a lot to have two people working when you're kind of on such a strict timeline, because you can just be like, okay, you take that, I'll take this. That kind of sounds a bit of a relief sometimes, I bet.
Definitely. A lot of composers now, I'm sure, as you know, it's like one composer scores the show, but like they're actually like 5 composers scoring it or something. So it's nice to I don't know, do something where it's like in the foreground that we're collaborating, and where we each kind of have like equal say, as opposed to like me
One
doing it.
person taking the
Yeah.
credit. Yeah, yeah. So, how did your collaboration process change with the film?
As Bob mentioned, you're kind of when you're writing television, you're writing thoughtfully, of course, still, but we had a little more time with Orion, so there was a little more back and forth with the director, and we'd have to kind of review a cue more regularly, or if something was kind of like he's like, I like this, but can we kind of shape it more to have more character? So there was a little more, and then that would. What's kind of nice about collaborating too with someone is they'll present ideas that you would have considered, and that will help you kind of maybe unlock something else in the scene or a new idea. So with Orion, it was kind of nice if one of us was maybe the director really was clearly drawn to something or clearly not. It kind of helped us understand more of the trajectory of the project and kind of what was going to vibe with the director and the producers. So maybe that was a little more, it was more involved, than Fu Panda.
Yeah, we could do more alternates, like, 2 versions of one scene. But also kind of what Kevin was alluding to, I think, was, Kung Fu Panda, for the most part, there's a clear direction of what the score should sound like because of the films that have come before. But for Orion, we're kind of figuring out what the sound is. So having like, Kevin's creative tastes, and then my like aesthetics that I have, just having like those two different minds was helpful.
Mm, yeah, that is really cool. And I bet it was nice to get feedback so much from the director and producers, to
Yeah,
help with that
yeah,
process.
they were really good at guiding us and helping us understand what they were after. The director, it was his like pretty much first time directing a film, but um, I don't know, he had really clear ideas, and but was also open.
Yeah. And he was also he wanted to be, he made himself very available for feedback, and he wanted to be involved in the process in terms of he's just a big music lover. So I think it was an enjoyable part of the process for him, and which was really nice because you'll get an array of directors who you work with or showrunners. And it was really nice to have that involvement of him feeling more intertwined with the movie as opposed to him being like, I want this sound, he'd be like, he would kind of guide you, as Bob said, but not still give you plenty of creative space. So it's fairly ideal, creatively.
Yeah, it almost felt a little bit like the student film scoring days, where you're just kind of like collaborating with a friend and trying to come up with something that is different for you guys. And what was cool too is they had temp that they loved, and they were like, this is the best temp ever. And the ending score doesn't really sound like the temp at all. Like, even though they loved something and they thought they had a direction, they were open. um, so that was really rewarding.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's got to be nice when you work with a director like that. When you finish the music, you're actually bringing something to life that they kind of maybe imagined but didn't. And when they're passionate like that about the music as well, like that's got to feel pretty good when you finish and they love, the end result.
Yeah, totally, it's really nice. It was cool too. The director wanted to have a fair amount of songs like from bands and stuff in the film, um, but it didn't necessarily work out for all the places. Like, there was a song he wanted in one scene, they couldn't get it. um, Normally I feel like they would just buy like a cheap song, but he was like, why don't you guys try writing something? Which was like kind of a breath of fresh air, and nice for us to get to explore different musical terrain.
Yeah, Ryan definitely kind of took Bob and I to many different places, from, as you said, writing an indie kind of pop song to big orchestral to kind of more minimalism. So it was a pretty large canvas to cover, which was great. And because the movie itself, not to spoil alert, but definitely um, it definitely takes us on an adventure time, and so on. So
Yeah, that sounds really fun. What was your favorite part? So I guess you mentioned that there's so many different genres of music and stuff. Um, but what was your favorite part of the actual music creation process? Was it the fact that there were so many genres, or did you have specific pieces that you enjoyed, or
Yeah, I think for me, my favorite part was hearing it all come together with the live musicians. Um, like it was nice when we were doing the mixes. We mixed in surround sound, so that was cool going to the mixer studio and like just hearing the music literally come to life. Yeah, it's like you do these mock-ups on your computer and you're happy with them, and maybe you connect with the music, but then hearing it like a real film score, it was cool.
Yeah, I would agree. I think kind of one thing I mentioned earlier, kind of the guerrilla tactics, Bob and I, in so much meaning we recorded solo woodwinds and strings here in LA, but then recorded orchestra in Europe as well as choir, and then the stuff we produce on our rigs in terms of synths and kind of miscellaneous things, piano. Um, and as Bob said, when we got to the mixer and just hearing it all come together in such an interesting way, and kind of you get so used to listening to your mock-up, and then when you hear the color and texture that a real player brings, even though we've done it so much, it still sounds so rewarding. And this was kind of unique because it was a cool blend of that solo sound of getting the mechanics of the flute, and hearing them push the mechanics of it, and
The close mics.
right, exactly. But then mixed with like the beautiful kind of more aqueous choir sound, and yeah, it was just that was perhaps one of the most rewarding parts of it all.
Well, yeah, the thing about music is it's never existed before. I mean, like, I don't know how many new things we write, whatever, but it's never existed before, in the way that you put it together. So it makes sense that every time you hear it for the first time with live players, it's going to be a magical experience.
Yeah, I'm often like nervous because I spend a lot of time on my mock-ups. Like I'm nervous. Okay, am I gonna like what the live musicians sound like? Like, what if they play this note too softly or too loudly or something like that? But that was not at all my experience when it was done. It was just like, this is awesome.
What did your guys's, I don't know, if you could break a day down during the creation process or during your work, and even maybe not specifically for this film, but just day to day, what does a day look like for you?
I count my coffee beans. No, didn't Beethoven do that, Bob, or something?
Do what?
Did he count his like coffee beans in the morning? Someone did. Like
Really?
composer. What I think, well, I think what it did, at least anecdotally or whatever, is provide some routine, because sometimes I think the life composer can be a little. There's no really well, it depends on things, but you have to kind of find that initiative yourself. So while for myself, each day to day is kind of unique, I do try to have some, I think, routines pretty important for myself, and I think, I don't know, I would encourage people, if like, your schedule's your own, but I think having routines important, where you get kind of, you got to write every day. And I don't know, it's nice to get up. I get up a little earlier and try to work out and practice the piano for a bit, and then write consistently each day. And of course that will vary, but I think having that kind of structure helps feel like you're making progress daily, whether it's a trickle of progress or a rushing river, as long as you kind of just have that steady pulsing metronome, in your life.
Nice
So.
metaphor.
Thanks.
That was a good one.
Yeah, for me, the routine is really helpful as well. I have a family now. Like I have 2 crazy dogs and a 2-year-old daughter. So keeping the same routine that I used to is, it's like, it can be tough. But generally, so like back in the day, it was like, okay, at like 5, I do this, at 6, I do that. And it was good for trying to meet like those intense deadlines. But now it's like, yeah, get up, like do like a little hike in the morning or some exercise, and then start composing until my brain's for a couple hours, break for breakfast, compose for more. And then like to the end of the day, and then make dinner for the family. And yeah, just
Nice.
kind of simple and straightforward.
That's real life.
Yeah, try to break, but I try to like break it up at like regular intervals, for a mental break and maybe like some physical movement and stuff.
Yeah, one thing that, and kind of piggyback off Bob said, taking breaks and stuff. And I think when you're heat of a project, and it's sometimes hard to break away from the studio, but I've found the benefit of, even if you feel the pressure to get a cue done, or you're unsure of where to take a cue. I fortunately live pretty close to the beach, and I just find I don't do as much as I like, but even just like 5 minutes down there kind of helps release some of that confused or just like that stress angst of kind of getting it done. And actually it's pretty productive to where maybe you're reluctant to get away from the studio because you're worried that you might miss when you finish the queue or whatever. But I think finding time to get away can actually be, you can reap a lot of rewards that you might not expect.
Yeah, like I don't know, a while back when I was working a lot of TV shows, so I would be churning out like a lot of minutes every day. Um, it's like every evening I would take like a little hike, and just getting out into nature and moving would just totally clear my mind and let me like have another boost of energy to work into the night. And I did one film where like my deadlines were too intense, and I was like, I can't do that. And I feel like I went crazy, and it like totally hurt the music. And if I had just taken the time to do that, it would have been a good thing.
Hmm. It's always interesting because in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't have time. I don't have
Yeah,
time to take a break, or I don't have time to work out, or I don't have time for this. But in reality, I totally agree. I think when you take a break, and especially do something outside, or at least look outside,
yeah,
it clears your head so much. And then the work you do is so much more efficient in the time that you have.
yeah. Hopefully,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the hope. I feel like most of the time it's got to work. If it works most of the
yeah,
time, it must work.
yeah. For me, it's a good thing for sure.
So, do you guys plan on doing more work together in the future?
Yeah, we'd like to, but we're open to like doing things on our own as well. And yeah, just kind of don't have a strict plan in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so far it's been um, a successful kind of productive relationship. So yeah, we kind of figured, we'll approach the DreamWorks world animation kind of collectively, but then beyond that, maybe it's a little more, and this is all an evolving discussion, but that's kind of a rough approach at the time.
Yeah, like other things are more like, okay, do I want to do this on together or alone, or yeah,
So you're just whatever happens, happens kind of a thing.
Yeah, maybe a little structure, but we're also open to giving each other just seeing what feels most organic as the
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah,
And maybe you're past this point, but um, when you guys first receive a film to work on, whether it's together or apart, or a TV show, a project, whatever it is, do you have any doubts that enter your mind at first? Like, am I actually going to be able to do this? Or does that happen to you still? Or has that ever happened to you?
yeah. I definitely have that.
yeah, in the past and still, although I would say it's maybe not as intense as it used to be, whether that's a function of apathy, no, more so, getting a little more confident in your ability. It's sometimes hard to think about how am I going to simulate what I've done in the past when everyone liked it so much, or I liked it so much. Am I going to be able to do it again? I think it's all kind of normal, but I think it's good on some level to keep you honest about,
Yeah,
you know, having that little bit of like, you want, I guess, whether anxiety or whatever, you don't want to be disruptive, but if it keeps you focused and achieving something that you have a bar for in terms of quality and how fulfilling it is, I think that's a good thing.
yeah. I think one challenge for me with film music is it's not a question of like, okay, can I write some music again? It's like, can I write some music that's going to make these people who are hiring me happy?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like Kevin says, it's like I don't know, you get hired, you just do it, and you just gotta. It's like you just gotta take a step forward and start walking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Somehow it always happens, whether it's like you kind of enter that when you first, as you said, download the QuickTime file or listen to watch it through, or, there's a little bit of concern, but then even with some of that concern, of when you first start a project and taking that first step, it's like when you finish it, somehow, it's just like one of those things that somehow you're going to do it, as long as you like, it will work out. I don't know. I do believe in there's like some property in the universe of like, if you just stick with it and approach it in good faith and, with an open mind, like you'll be able to write some more great music.
Yeah, totally. I definitely have those doubts, and I'm sure it's a normal thing. And again, it's a job that has quite a bit of pressure on it because you're literally creating something that doesn't exist yet. And it matters a lot. The music in film or whatever it is a really crucial part of that. So I think it's completely normal too. And I love what you guys said that it can help you actually achieve what you need to achieve if it's done in the right way. So, is there anything that you wish you knew before starting work in the film or film scoring industry?
I'd have to think about this one. I think we were lucky that we went to a program where we studied film scoring, so we got to have so many composers come and talk to us and kind of tell us what it was like. So I think I had good expectations.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was, even though sometimes it's challenging, as you said, you'll like wake up at 6 in the morning under a piano and you get up and you write for 16 hours and you go back to, I think that's kind of part of it. Like when you're in the trenches and, so maybe just like a consoling voice saying, as long as you kind of stick with it and have that, perseverance, maybe that would have, if I would have known just like the amount of perseverance, needed. And that's kind of part of the process. Um,
Yeah, I wish I had had a little more confidence early on. But I mean, things worked out, and I feel like there's no way I could have had that. It just comes from like experience. Perhaps if the earlier part of my life were different, I would have developed more confidence by the time I was entering the industry. But
yeah.
Yeah, I think those are really good. So, confidence and the perseverance. Yeah. I think that's a really good point about perseverance, and just maybe just knowing that your schedule is normal to wake up and work for 16 hours a day.
Well, for so long, but I think enjoy the experiences while you're having them, whether you're having an emotional time that's very difficult. I think that's all kind of part of the journey that allows you to create music that people will be able to connect with. And this is kind of getting maybe a little slightly ahead of the question, but something Bob and I reflect on somewhat regularly about thinking about when you go meet directors and producers, when you demo for stuff, is having an air of being personable. I think is a pretty key quality to, because you're going to be working with these people in a pretty strenuous environment and they're going to be stressed. And so I think the more that you can be confident and comfortable and, enjoyable to be around when it comes to the music aspect of it, I think that's a big aspect, big part of it. And also asking them questions and seeing what type of music they like and, and all that. So, I guess I'm linking it to the prior question is like, I think going through those tough experiences help you build a character that becomes someone people want to collaborate with because you have a voice, you've gone through some emotional things that you can convey music, uh, on or via.
If there were anything that you could change about the industry, what would it be?
Ghostwriting. Well, I mean, I think it has pros and cons, and ghostwriting being, someone, as Bob kind of outlined earlier, where a composer will be the lead and then having a stable of people who work under them that write the bulk of the score or whatever, and some of that's going to be inevitable and can exist. But I think to the extent that it exists today, is a little unfortunate where someone will just absorb a ton of work and then they'll have people work under them. And it can be lucrative and you can get some credit and, royalty streams, but it just seems to the extent that someone's taking all this credit and the bulk of at least back end or whatever, it's pretty inequitable, not the most equitable situation. So,
yeah, I agree. Although for me, I was lucky. Like I ghost wrote and then, well, or did like writing for someone, but then it eventually led to him sharing credit with me, and that led to me getting my own work. So I think in a few situations, like it's a great way to learn and kind of apprentice, and then you grow from there. But there are a lot of composers who just are like taking advantage of other composers.
I do feel like sometimes there's a mindset of there's like not enough work for everyone. And I guess the thing with film scoring particularly is that not all films are good. And not all films are, like Hollywood, Disney, DreamWorks, whatever else. But it just feels like there's this bar you have to cross before you are successful or can get successful films. But I kind of wish that we could take that bar away just as composers and just look at how many people produce movies and produce art and just how many platforms there are and possibilities rather than look at it as there's not enough. Sorry, like this is my thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be cool if there were more ways to kind of apply for jobs or like break in. Um, like you were saying, even at Berkeley, where they're like, okay, collaborate with students, and it's like, well, how do I find students to do that with? It's like, I don't know. It would be cool if it weren't all like based on connections and credits. Even though those things are important because you want to, a filmmaker wants to hire someone they can trust, has a track record, but more opportunities for like young composers to kind of be able to prove themselves. Like a bunch of ways I've gotten hired, and the way Kevin and I got hired was like scoring scenes as a demo. So like, I don't know.
I also feel like those who are in the industry and successful don't need to be scared, I guess, of other composers being successful. Like
Yeah.
we should all support each other in our successes rather than feel like if someone else got a job, that's one job you didn't get, if that makes sense too.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, yeah. Do you feel like that exists?
I think there's definitely that, but I think, well, I can't speak for Kevin, but I like when we were in school, we were in a class with like maybe 18 composers, and I feel like we had a good supportive like dynamic. And I think like a lot of my friends who are composers are still like that. We want each other to do well, and we feel like there's enough work, but I don't know. Of course, it's easy to like be insecure and
No, yeah, for sure. I think we had our graduates class was cool because a lot of us are still friends. A lot of us are still in the industry, and some people are doing pretty well. So it's nice to kind of have that kind of social group or the group of people. One thing I was going to add, I was kind of considering the question earlier you had about if I had known one thing earlier or prior to kind of getting into the field. And maybe it's not like a profound thing, but something that someone told me from a young age. Well, I did this thing at USC when I first got there my freshman years. Got a chance to meet Bill Conti, who composed music for Karate Kid and The Right Stuff and some other movies from that era.
Rocky, right?
Rocky, yeah. And one thing he impressed upon me was before you start a project, almost to the degree, Nadia, when you're kind of commenting on, you feel that concern of leaving your studio to go take a break or something, which we've all kind of commented on. But even before you start a project, give yourself what might be an uncomfortable amount of time just to do some prep work, in terms of listening to stuff and experimenting. Granted, if you have time, if you have to like get cooking, then you don't have this luxury. But I think maybe avoiding, unless you feel really good about what you're doing, you're kind of like confident about it. But I think taking the time to step away from it and just listen to kind of unique things and maybe throw stuff against the tapestry, so to speak, of the movie, of maybe some unusual music or instruments might, again, unlock new things that you wouldn't consider, and then maybe help hasten the process later on because now you have a template or interesting sounds that you could share with the director and go on. So I think that's kind of a powerful thing that I don't always do, but I'm trying to be more mindful of that, of not the anxiety of kind of getting started and getting into your sequencer and getting all the hit points in, just being like, what can this kind of shape be, and interesting sounds and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think when you're not on a project too is like a great time to do some of those things. Like sometimes I'll like just listen to music and just try to like be absorbing things from the world. It doesn't even have to be music too. That like sometimes I'm like, am I wasting time now because I'm not creating music? But I think I usually know like you have to kind of absorb things in order to like let them digest, and then eventually they come out as new sorts of inspiration. And then the same thing, like I don't know, like you said, you practice piano every day. It's like you could come up with ideas, like just experimenting, composing, and then maybe when you're on a project, like you can pull from them.
Yeah, I really like that.
Well, I remember the other thing I was going to add when we were talking about having a social group of maybe a little more collaborative space, as opposed to, when you don't get a project, thinking of it as losing a project, or as opposed to maybe thinking of that another person that got it, good for them, try to approach that in good faith. But I think we would benefit from is more transparency. And, we don't have a union for what we do. So there's sometimes a lack of transparency in terms of what are people getting paid, like a minute rate and royalties. And I think just getting that out there, I think could be helpful, just to shed light on, oh, these are competitive rates, and I think this is what I should get paid on this gig, as opposed to being nervous about asking for what you think is a fair budget for a project and fair royalties and publishing and writers, portions. And so I think people are slowly getting me better at that, but I think having more transparency would be helpful for the world of composers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. I struggle with that myself. I'm like, I don't even know what where to start at, So I think that's a really good point. Yeah, just having, like you said, good faith in everyone and being transparent, open, like celebrating other people's successes as well. So it's more of a community rather than feeling jealous or, whatever else that feeling might be. I actually did want to ask you guys what you do in between periods of work, because um, there's so many things you can do as a musician. Like, you can practice piano, you could compose, like, you could work on technology, you could learn new music theory. I don't know. There's so many things you could do. And I really liked that you said that you just take the time to do what you want to do. And also, I think, was it Kevin that talked about?
Oh, Bill Conti.
Yeah, I love that. If you just think about, for example, your diet. If you want to have a healthy diet, the biggest part of that I feel like is in the planning. If you can do the planning beforehand, you're more likely to achieve a healthy diet. And I feel like that is a big thing with composing. Yes, the time frame might be different and might be crunched depending on what you're working on, but I really love that, taking the time to kind of like soak in what you're going to be working on, listen to things, think about what you're doing, take time to really like fine tune the instruments you want to use and stuff. I think that is actually so helpful because it might save you hours later on in the creative process where you're stuck. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. You made me think of one thing I wish I had known earlier. Um, because I was working for other I don't know. I guess I wish I had focused on trying to have fun earlier in my career, especially like writing for other composers. I like kind of didn't enjoy the composing, and then finally when I was like working on my own, I enjoyed it more. But I had to like actually realize, okay, it's like just should be my goal to like have fun and enjoy making music, and I don't know. That's like why we're doing what we're doing, but for some reason I fell into this trap of like, okay, I gotta like write a minute in the next 3 hours. Okay, put the bass drum here, or like hold down this string chord. So it was kind of like factory work, and it kind of sucked.
Mm.
um, so
Yeah, that would be a lot harder, I feel like, than this whole creative process we've been talking about. I guess there is that side of just like you have to just get something done. So what's your go-to thing?
yeah, but I don't think that was a good way for me to. I mean, I don't have any regrets, but if I could talk to myself again, or if I would talk to other people, I would tell them to like enjoy the process as much as possible, and if there are things getting in the way of them enjoying it, like figure out a way around those things, if they can.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with Bob said. If you do step back and kind of consider that even amid a stressful situation, maybe it's kind of tense between you and the lead composer or whatever, whatever situation, that you're still writing music, and I think there still can be 10% something that you can throw in the piece of music that you're like, I'm just gonna do this just for me. I'm gonna do like a little marimba swell that's right here. Maybe no one will notice, but I'll know it's there and I like it. Do little things
Yeah.
like that, to kind of bring some color to it that is a little piece of you. And
It's like a signature, a musical signature.
Yeah, there were like some additional music pieces I did where I was like, oh, I'm gonna put a canon in here, just to like kind of like thumb my nose at the person I was working with, but or I don't know, just to have fun, I guess. Yeah.
um, and I don't know if we're fine if you still. I know it's getting late there, so I don't want to kind of carry on too much here. Um, But, even on the notion of, I just want to tack on two little things that are kind of helpful for me. And actually, Bob's really good at this is, well, is when you get prep for a job, not only can it be kind of a creative time, but it can also be a technical time to kind of prepare everything as far as what you'll need to output at the end. So again, the earlier you do that in the process and just get a good workflow going, it can save endless time at the end when you have to start outputting things in different formats for different people, with or without verb, or whatever, different amount of stems. And I kind of, and this is getting back more to the creative aspect, but I kind of liken it to like writing a paper outline, what we learn when we're young, of like having your thesis and like topic sentences for your paragraphs. It's kind of almost to a degree like that, when you start composing. So the more time you spend writing your outline paper, that's going to outline what you want to hit and the subject and the flow. It's almost, if you can translate that to music, it helps the whole process, as you were saying, Nadia, with like, as you go through it, you kind of have this structure that will be kind of a foundation as you go through it, and just help fill in some of those dots as you go through. And I think that can help.
I think about the same thing, like essay format. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. That I was like, oh yeah, totally, that makes sense. Yeah, that was a great way to put it. Well, I think that's kind of covers the questions I had for you guys, and I have gotten a lot out of this myself. It's been really nice to talk to you guys and talk about not just, the dream of film scoring and all the nice parts, but just kind of get into the real life stuff as well. So, thank you guys so much for your answers and for taking the time to do this interview. As we wrap up, is there any last advice or anything you'd want to add in?
I was just going to say maybe kind of what Bob was saying, or like finding stuff that you want to do, whether it's, when you're off a project, but cultivate other interests, whether that's gardening or getting outdoors, photography, because I think that also helps the music. You can get away from it and it kind of helps. So anyways, whatever that is in your life, if you have other interests, it's totally fine to cultivate those and almost, get more into those at times. It doesn't mean you're abandoning composing or, not a composer anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot of the things that I think are important, like, the persistence, having fun. Just embracing the joy of music and film. Trying to have like a good community, being supportive of those around you, I think is really valuable.
Yeah, I feel like you guys covered a huge range of things. So, for anyone listening that wants to be able to follow you guys or listen to your music, where can they find you?
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's a good place, or you could just Google me and you'll find my email address, which is lydeckermusic@gmail.com, and just shoot me a note.
Okay, perfect. And I will put both of your information in the episode notes for this podcast so that people can easily find you. Thank you guys again so much for coming on the podcast today. I really look forward to seeing where both of your careers go, and I wish you the best with everything that you're working on and going to work on in the future. Thank you as well to those of you who are listening to this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I will see you next time on The Composer's Life.